Okay, today I just wanted to take some time today and talk about 9/11. It's an important day. It's just one of those noteworthy days in American history, kind of like Pearl Harbor Day when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. It's just one of those days. You may not know much about it, but like say your grandparents, maybe they could tell you possibly where they were when they found out that when they learned that the president at the time, John F. Kennedy, was shot and killed in the 1960s. 9/11, September 11th, 2001. This is one of those things where your parents could very possibly tell you where they were. They will always know where they were when they heard about what was happening. The pictures you see on the screen right now, these I actually watched this live on TV. I had gotten up and somehow I'd caught wind of something. I turned on the TV and it was just all over the news. And the first tower had already been hit, and I was actually watching live TV as the second plane flew into the tower. And this is one of those marking points in American history where our society changed. So much about the American way of life changed after this day in 2001. It's like I said before, it's an important day of remembrance. We suffered the biggest terrorist attack in our nation's history. We had terrorist attacks before, but never on this scale. They were carried out as four separate plane hijackings by Saudi Arabian nationals. They had been trained to fly large passenger jets, and they belonged to an Islamist terrorist organization called Al Qaeda, founded by a man called Osama bin Laden. And there were three intended targets. The first target was the World Trade Center. All right, the World Trade Center, it was a symbol of American economic power and might. I mean, New York City was always generally been regarded as the financial center of the world, right? Nations from all over the planet, and as well as the most powerful and wealthy financial institutions in our country, they kept offices at the World Trade Center. And it was the tallest building in America, or the tallest two buildings in America, and some of the tallest buildings in the world. The terrorists knew that that would be a massive impact on the news. It would be, it was a high value target to them because they knew that the news would be splashed all over the world if they were managed to destroy those two buildings. The second one was the Pentagon. Okay. And the Pentagon was targeted because it serves as the nerve center of the United States military. And our military is the most powerful and technologically advanced military on the face of the earth. There is not not much of any military could even begin to stand up against ours if we unleash our men and women and the technology that we have to achieve our objectives. And so, what we have a picture on the left, that's what the Pentagon, normally looks like. It's in Washington D.C., right across the Potomac River from the National Mall. You can see the tall spire in the background. That's the Washington Monument. It was built in the 1940s during World War II. And one of my uncles has a brother who actually he decided to go career in the Navy, and he works in naval intelligence at the Pentagon. But on the right hand side, you see a picture of the Pentagon after one of the planes crashed into it. And as you can kind of see, there's no plane left. There's hardly any plane left. It's just incinerated. It obliterates everything. And so the third the third target was the White House. Okay, the White House is a symbol of America's position and prestige in the world, right? America is seen as the leader of the free world, and the American president as the leader of the leading nation in the free world, he is regarded as one of, if not the most powerful man on the planet, men on the planet. And so to crash a plane and destroy the home of the most powerful man in the world would be a major, major blow, a shocking blow to the strength and security of all of America's leaders. If they could do that, what couldn't they do? That was the thinking. And so America tends to get the blame, rightly or wrongly, for just about anything that goes wrong in the world. And so they had a lot of grievances in their ideology against the West, against capitalism, and against the freedoms that we have in the West. And so they decided to strike a blow in a war against us. But even though the White House was the third target, and they had already hit the World Trade Center with 2 planes, they had hit the Pentagon with a 3rd plane. The 4th plane was headed for the White House, but not everything went according to plan. After the hijackers took control of the 4th plane and they began to change course to head towards Washington, D.C., a group of passengers realized what was about to happen, what the intent of the terrorists was. They intended to crash the plane. They weren't just hijacking the plane and kidnapping people, which had been they call the modus operandi, the MO of terrorists in planes in the past. In the past, they had hijacked an airplane, held hostages, demanded the release of these prisoners or that, but they realized this time they were wanting to crash the plane. And so they had to make a choice. They could either sit and wait for their fate, they could wait to die, or do they stand up and fight back? So they realized that their only chance of survival was to fight back and try to overpower the terrorists and take control of the plane. And once they realized that, they decided that they had no choice. You know, if they sat down and quietly waited on the plane, they were going to die. The only way that they could possibly ever survive that was to fight back and try to get control of the plane. And so once they decided to act, they took a few minutes, and if they could, they tried to quickly call their loved ones, their wives, their children, their parents, one last time. And a lot of those messages were preserved. They were picked up on answering machines, on voicemails. Some of them were recounted, and when they got a hold of their loved ones, their conversations were remembered. One of the men, a man named Todd Beamer, he actually became kind of famous, and he called his wife to tell her that he loved her one last time. And as he was hanging up, his wife heard him tell another passenger, "Let's roll," signaling that he was ready. He was ready to go. He was ready to fight. Let's do this. And so during the fight, the passengers were able to break their way into the cockpit and fight off the terrorists who were flying the plane. They were not able to get complete control of the plane, but during the fight, they managed to get enough control to force the plane down and crashed into an open field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Little town in the middle of nowhere, little farmland in Pennsylvania. And we've got some pictures kind of the crash site and whatnot. Everybody on board died, including Beamer. And about a year or two after the crash, Beamer's wife, Lisa, she wrote a book talking about her husband and what he believed in and the way he lived his life and the way his life ended. And as a way to remember him and honor him and his sacrifice and his bravery and actions that he took. And he willingly sacrificed his life to save countless others. I mean, you never know how many people would have died had that plane gone into Washington, D.C. and crashed into the White House. It could have been hundreds more. It could have been thousands more died. And so because of the actions of those people in that plane, in driving it down into the ground in an open field in the middle of nowhere, they saved thousands, probably thousands of others from death. And you can kind of see on the left, you've got pictures of the crash site. And kind of to the right, it's kind of what it looks like today. It's there's a memorial there. The government built a very contemplative, a very quiet, peaceful memorial uh, remembering the sacrifice of those people and the bravery that they showed that day. And so, just to kind of sum up, on that day, September 11th, 2001, just under 3,000 people died. 6,000 more were injured. And at the World Trade Center in New York City, 2,606 people died, including 343 firefighters, New York City firefighters, and 71 New York and New Jersey police officers, Port Authority officers. Everybody raced to the World Trade Center after it was hit. I mean, it was just a horrifying thing to watch. And there are so many countless stories of these brave men and women that chose to serve in the police department or the fire department. And as people were frantically trying to get out, these officers and firefighters, they were running into the building to rescue people. I mean, there are just entire companies and firehouses in the New York City Fire Department that, you know what, every firefighter in that house died. They all died and they didn't make it out. And so their sacrifice is just something that on this day that we should always reflect on and honor and respect and remember. And the thing is about that day, what what changed in America was that our eyes were opened to what was going on really in the rest of the world. I mean, it was you could almost say that, you know, these these certain groups, terrorists and fanatics in other parts of the world, they you could almost say that they were at war with us, but we were not at war with them. We weren't even paying them enough attention until this day. I mean, a lot of the things that you experience, like at airports today, they didn't exist back then. All of those like TSA, all the pat downs and the screenings and all these things, all the long lines, 3 hours wait sometimes to get through the airport because of security screenings. Those things didn't even exist. I mean, it was quick and easy to get on a plane and fly anywhere you wanted to. There wasn't that level of security and scrutiny. You didn't have the government, going through the internet and checking things that you do online, searches. You search certain items on the internet, you may get flagged. All those kinds of surveillance things, those weren't in place back then. But as a result of us realizing that the world was a far more dangerous place than we had really uh, taken account of, these are the things that we have to deal with today. And it all began on September 11th. All right, that's all I've got today, and we will see you next